So it begins.
Oh, once again, welcome everyone to another episode of We're Not Helpful, a podcast about books, our thoughts, recommendations, and opinions of them. I am Eloise, as always, and joining me is Brayton and Julian. Hello!
Hello.
Good evening.
Julian's on a bit of a delay, apparently.
It's the
Or are you?
satellite.
Yes, it has to bounce back from his house
He's
over to
coming to
here.
us live from what's a faraway?
About 10 minutes away from Brayton.
Yeah.
from,
And the
from
satellite's
his
got to bounce
basement.
up and down. And it's amazing that Eloise, you're further away than me and we're coming in quite clear. But Julian, that 10 minutes, it's a real killer.
I know. You got to get some better
Australian
internet.
internet, gotta love it.
Oh yeah, we do not have good internet.
We do not.
No.
Oh well. So how are you boys? How has been your week in literature?
Yeah, it's fine.
Oh, good.
I wouldn't say I'm reading literature at the moment, but it's good.
How would you define literature? I really want to know actually what the definition of literature is.
Things we're allowed to teach in high school.
Yep.
Right. Is that literally what it means, or are you just you making that up?
Things that critics like, I guess, is what we consider
Ah,
literature.
we should probably look that
Yeah.
up and actually see what the definition of literature is,
This
because I
this
haven't really
feels like a
understood.
whole
That probably is a whole episode, and it's not
yeah.
what today's about.
Yeah, I didn't prepare for this.
No,
You
okay.
caught me off guard.
I'm very sorry. Just throwing out questions there. All right. How about we leave that for another episode? Today's episode, however, is a very special episode.
Oh
Ooh,
Yeah.
yes.
it's
We
that time of the season. Brayton, what
it
time
is
is it, Brayton?
it is officially less than 100 days until Christmas.
Yay! It's at the
Woohoo!
singing of the street corner
The choir
choir. It's
going
going home and sitting warm by the fire. It's
It's
true
true
wherever
wherever you find love.
find love. It feels like Christmas.
I hate you both.
So, full disclosure, I was walking around the shopping center this afternoon and this thought suddenly struck me about how funny it would be to do that because I knew exactly what your reaction would be. And I was grinning like a maniac as I was texting Brayton, oh my God, I've got the best idea.
If anyone is interested, it is officially 65 days, 4 hours, 17 minutes, and 22 seconds until Christmas.
Why am I friends with you two?
Because
I
we
swear
do
to
things
God,
like this.
this year, Julian, we're turning up to your doorstep dressed as the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. And we're going to make you stop being a humbug.
I just won't let you in.
Okay.
Well,
He's
you
got
can
us
come into the
there.
house, but I won't let you into my heart.
We're doing it anyway. Um, we do have a very good episode that we've got for you this week. It's obviously not
Yes,
Christmas themed. But before we do get into that, Brayton, we do have listener mail.
we do from long-time listener and friend of ours, Richie.
Hey,
Yay!
Been a
Richie.
while since we've heard from him, but I think Julian, you said once he's still listening, just not emailing in. But
Yes.
anyway, he's emailed in today.
Excellent. What does Richie
Hooray.
have to say?
Okay, this is about our art versus artist episode, which came out, many weeks now.
Mm.
Doing these fortnightly means that episodes that are only a few episodes ago were like months ago. Okay, so he says, hello, not helpful crew. Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Sorry it's been so long between emails. It's been a hard slog out here, but life has found a way. I just wanted to touch base on the separating art from artist episode, and hopefully I can keep this short. Spoiler alert, he doesn't. Already
The
failed.
voice of God, the voice of God. He didn't.
He did not. You all expressed a lot of opinions on this, all of which are valid, and I do not wish to counter any of them, merely to offer another take which you didn't touch upon. Which is fair enough. We can only touch on so much.
Mm.
Not supporting entertainment that can still actively hurt other people. Let's take J.K. Rowling as an example. Anytime you purchase products related to the Harry Potter franchise or support media from it, you are putting yet more money in her pocket and giving her more fuel to burn however she pleases, which we all know how she does at this point.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
Yes.
Mhm.
She's already at the point that she has made enough that individually we are not going to make any sort of difference, even if we banded together as a whole, her accounts are never going to suffer. So what effect does it actually have?
Also true.
Well, it is an outward effect on yourself in two different ways. You yourself know that you are supporting and can justify or admonish yourself however you do. I'm not here to tell you how to live your life, but you are also telling the trans people around you that you may not be a safe place for them.
I actually wish you would tell me how to live my life because I'm floundering. So
wouldn't it? I have thought so many times, wouldn't it be nice if you just had someone that's like almost like just some sort of life planner, just here's your day.
Yeah, that would help.
Mm.
Anyhow, I mean, he was making a serious point. I don't wish to derail him.
Yes. Settle down, Julian.
Sorry.
As a trans friend once told me, if I see someone wearing Harry Potter merch, I instantly go into protect myself mode because they are literally wearing the mascots of someone who wishes me harm.
Mm.
This example is super easy for me because I never got the Harry Potter bug. For whatever reason, it never appealed to me, so I lose nothing. But I was a huge Joss Whedon fan, and in response to his outing, will never again support anything he does again. All in all, I don't like to throw judgment around. I'd never call someone out publicly for their choices, but there are always other options. Eloise stated that if we threw out everything connected to something terrible, we would have nothing. And while that's not 100% true, it's pretty darn close. My choices on how to battle this. Once a problematic artist has passed, feel free to enjoy their art as much as you like. Once they can no longer fuel an agenda, go ham. I think we touched on that when we talk about H.P. Lovecraft.
Yep.
Also, there are plenty of ethical artists out there, cough, drop out TV, and cough. He literally wrote cough and end cough there. That's not me.
Dropout TV, I believe, was once College Humor, if those of you don't know who that is. So.
Oh, I didn't realize they changed. I thought they were still College Humor.
Yes, I will.
No, they rebranded a few years ago, I believe.
Yeah, I can talk you through all of Dropout TV in a second. Love Dropout TV.
I didn't realize they were the same. They were the same things. Yeah.
So he concludes, perhaps now's the time we support those types and bring about hard change in our entertainment. All in all, just a suggestion based on my opinion, as ever, to each their own. And that's it.
Thank you, Richie, for writing in.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really good thoughts.
I do remember how crushed he was with what happened with Joss Whedon. We had a lot of long talks about Buffy and Angel and the Joss Whedon universe, and then when this happened, it was really upsetting for Richie because he did really enjoy a lot of the stuff Joss
as it would have been for a lot of people. And like it upset me because I loved all of that, Buffy, Angel, Firefly, all of that, like things that, and Firefly had a double whammy as well because you had who was the Baldwin? Adam Baldwin, yeah. Who turned out into a very problematic character as well. And like Jane was like one of the best characters. And so without getting back into that debate again, it's hard. There's really no answer to it other than perhaps what Richie said is to wait until someone passes before you can truly enjoy the output again, perhaps, but each to their own, I think.
Speaking of Adam Baldwin, I had just recently got my own double whammy because of him. And then finding out that Zachary Levi is a huge Trump supporter. And I just thought, I just cannot watch Trump. He's ruined Chuck for me.
Yeah.
And you love Chuck.
I love that show to death.
Yeah.
But now I just don't see how I can watch it with both of those two actors in it.
Yeah. I don't know if I've spoken about it before on the podcast, but you guys know that I'm a very big wrestling fan, like huge wrestling fan. And Hulk Hogan coming out and actually being at the RNC and supporting Trump. I'm like,
I think Kane and The Undertaker just had a video supporting Trump.
Not the Taker. No, not the Undertaker.
Not the Phenom.
Let me double check.
No, don't.
Don't.
Oh, well, yeah.
We don't.
Yeah, you probably should.
Oh. Please not The Undertaker.
While he's checking for that, like I recently just finished watching the documentary Mr. McMahon on Netflix, which is a fantastic documentary, but oh boy, it made me reassess my former love of the wrestling. Like I haven't really watched it properly in years because like I haven't really found it interesting in the last few years. But I grew up watching like what was the 90s era called, Julian?
The Attitude Era?
Yeah, I grew up watching the Attitude Era, which looking back on it through watching the documentary Mr. McMahon on Netflix was probably the worst era in terms of like massive sexism, like the attitudes of opinions about certain things, you know, and it's really not surprising where things kind of led. And the fact that McMahon is a friend of Trump, you know, he was on the wrestling, you know, back in the day, the Battle of the Billionaires, when you actually was like, yeah, Trump, go beat up Mr. McMahon. Oh my God. Like it's bad when Mr. McMahon was the worst of those two people. But this was back in the day when Trump wasn't seen as a massive weird person doing terrible
He was a
things to the
vaguely
planet.
eloquent Democrat once upon a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, Kane and The Undertaker both just appeared in a video with Trump endorsing him.
Ah, shit.
I'm really sad
just
now.
from the article I'm reading on Reddit, the wrestling community on Reddit are not happy about it.
No.
Undertaker
No.
is like the wrestler.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know. Well, I
that's
don't know
really
if it's any
sad.
solace, but Dave Bautista came out in support of
Yeah.
Kamala. With a
Okay,
great
I was
video.
actually
I'm
gonna
not shocked. Not shocked.
I was gonna bring that up actually because he was on the end of Jimmy Kimmel's monologue on Friday night doing this wonderful piece about how much a piece of shit Trump was, and it was brilliant. And I was actually thinking to myself, you know what, this is actually really surprising because I think he is the only wrestler in the WWE that I can think of who has actively come out in support of Kamala because of the fact that the wrestling community, like the WWE itself, is a very conservative place because, I mean, Vince is Trump's friend. Linda McMahon worked in Trump's administration as like housing, something to do with housing or business, it was business. I forget. It was, I don't know, something.
Business.
Small business, I think it was. And like, even The Rock, like he doesn't really say anything very political, but he very much is careful to not show his political leanings. And I think that's because he tends to lean more towards conservatism, but he knows it's going to destroy his brand if he comes out saying that directly.
He supported Biden in 2020
okay.
publicly. But he got a lot of back because a lot of his fans are conservative wrestling fans, and so he's been very careful to say nothing this time around.
Yeah,
Which,
so
when you consider it, wouldn't make a dent once again in his finances either.
No, it wouldn't.
And I have to say, The Rock's clout over the last couple of years has really like dropped.
Do you think?
Yeah,
he's still very bankable.
All the stuff that came out about that Christmas movie
yeah.
he filmed, people are kind of, because The Rock is kind of like the same in every movie, and I think people are getting a little fed up with it.
Yeah, they're probably a little tired of it now. We'll see. But in any case, yeah, I like this. It's one of those things where I've now really had to reevaluate how much I enjoyed that entertainment, and like I don't particularly support it anymore. I think I go as far as maybe watching WrestleMania every year, and that's about it. But it's like, man, that like there was a lot of shit that was right there for everyone to see, especially with everything to do with Mr. McMahon.
It's not really his company anymore.
It's not. No, it has kind of moved away, but I think the damage has
better.
certainly been done in terms of the entrenched kind of values. But admittedly, yeah, like a lot of changes have happened, especially in the last decade, where they're a bit more well-being focused, they're a bit more mental health focused, they're a bit more let's not do chair shots to the head anymore to prevent massive concussion injury focused anymore. So
I do wonder who Shawn Michaels supports, because from what I hear, he's an amazing, loving man, but he's also an evangelical Texan. So
that's a 50-50.
Yeah.
I will take this opportunity, like Richie said, to just sing my praise for Dropout TV.
Yep.
Which you were right. It was College Humor, which was a very like early internet kind of just almost like a Reddit precursor, I think.
One of my favorite comedians / podcasters got his start on College Humor as well, by the way. Henry Zabrowski.
Oh, really?
Oh, cool.
In the early days of College Humor.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. I did not know that.
I think he has mentioned that on the podcast.
Yes,
on his
but
podcast.
Then...
You know, we're not friends with Henry Zabrowski.
No.
We'd like to be. He's amazing.
One day.
If you're listening, Henry, we would be your friend.
Yeah.
Happily.
But College Humor recently rebranded. Recently, I say like a year or so ago, to Dropout. They had this whole thing where the kind of parent company that was bankrolling College Humor, either they folded or they just went, "We're not funding you anymore." So then Sam Reich, who was, I'm not sure what position he had at that point, but he essentially bought out the company.
Yeah.
And rebuilt it almost from the ground up. And he's turned it into one of like the most apparently like ethical companies that exist today, at least in the entertainment world. Because they're very supportive of LGBTQ plus creators. It's apparently a profit sharing business model where all the people that have bought into the company have a say in it. And Richie and I had a bit of back and forth emails because I'm like, I subscribe to Dropout TV. I love it. He said apparently during the recent writers' strikes that they had, Dropout was exempt from striking because they were already the gold standard of what a writing like team should be.
Oh, wow.
But they still went on strike in support of all the other writers.
Good on them.
So they do a lot of they have Dimension 20, which is their Dungeons and Dragons series. They also have a whole heap of different game shows. If you're a fan of Whose Line Is It Anyway, there's one called Make Some Noise, which is fantastic. There is Game Changer, which is a game show where the game rules change every episode, and it is freaking hilarious.
That's the one that you're always sending us reels of, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, that is a great show.
It is a
very, very
freaking fantastic show, and they've got so much great stuff, and they support the community and a lot of up-and-coming comedians. They're even getting really much bigger names out there. On one episode of Make Some Noise, they had Wayne Brady on singing songs. Like they had a whole improv karaoke thing, and they got Wayne Brady on there. I don't know how. They probably paid him money.
He's so amazing at that. It's just an unbelievable gift that he has.
I have no ability to like rhyme. Like if you told me to do some rhyming right now, it wouldn't. I'd freak out. I'd
all right,
hide. I'd run away.
Smash round.
No,
here we go.
Don't ask me. No.
Orange. Rhyme something with orange.
Oh, screw you.
Orange.
Julian got it.
But I do find the people that have the ability to not only improvise rhyming but improvise songs are just so
it's amazing.
I cannot it is a talent I do not have and I envy.
If you are a nerd and like Dungeons and Dragons and Whose Line Is It Anyway, Dropout TV is just fantastic, and it's really inexpensive too. It cost me I think it was like $50 for a whole year.
That's not bad for a subscription.
And they're always running sales. So just keep it out. And their YouTube channel has a lot of their stuff, like the first 1 or 2 episodes of their series for free if you just want to check it out. And it's really good, well worth your time.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Richie, for writing in about all of that. And if anyone else has any other thoughts or opinions about anything that we have spoken about in the past, please do feel free to write in as well. And we'll put all of the details at the end of the podcast about where you can go to send us messages.
Yep.
All right, moving on to the main part of the episode tonight. We're once again handing back over to Julian for his spooky season. That's what the actual season is. It's not Christmas, it's spooky season.
Jingle bells, jingle bells.
No, you got to do it in a minor key and do it like really creepy, like jingle bells. Jingle... I think Julian's going to kill us.
He's frozen, either horrible internet or in rage.
Excellent.
I quit the podcast.
He's quit. Brayton, we can turn it into a Christmas podcast now. Yeah.
Christmas 24/7, 365.
All right.
Julian, go.
Go.
I don't want to now. You ruined it for me.
All right. Well, Eloise, what's your favorite Christmas
story? The whole podcast is ruined.
What's your favorite Christmas movie and why is it Muppets Christmas Carol?
It's the only right answer.
Yes, the only correct answer.
Is Home Alone not a potential suitor?
That is also up there.
Home Alone is good. It's no Muppets Christmas Carol though.
That's true. All right. We're gonna
do a Christmas. We are definitely doing a Christmas episode.
That's true. There's no. Yeah.
Join us in another 2 months when we get to that. Julian, take it away.
Tonight we are discussing our modern day boogeyman, Stephen King. Yay.
Okay.
Yay! And my favorite author, of course. Ooh. Yay!
Would you say he's the king of horror?
Ah.
I don't think anyone's actually made that joke before.
Really? I'm the first. It's so obvious, though.
I mean, I'm sure people have, but I don't think that's ever been in any of his marketing.
Oh. How is it not?
Yeah. Maybe it's a little bit too on the nose for him.
Is it?
Maybe.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe
okay, I'm trademarking that.
You don't know. You don't want to know what happened to the publicist who did suggest it to him at one time. He ended up as a victim in a book, dead and buried in the backyard. No, I don't know.
He keeps his heart in a jar on the desk.
Oh, under the floorboards. Wait, no, that's a different author.
Another good horror author, but yes, different.
Yes, all right.
So, Stephen King, a master of horror, some would say, but I would say to you, he is not actually a horror writer. He is a storyteller whose characters often end up in very horrific and sometimes supernatural circumstances. What do you think? What do you think on that? Eloise, what's your thought on that? I know you don't really read a lot of Stephen King, but...
I think that is actually a really good point because a lot of his stories do start out quite like normal, I suppose, like an everyday thing, like Pet Cemetery, for example. It's an everyday family moving into a house, and then oh no, haunted cemetery in the backyard. So
such a despairing novel.
So I think it is. Yeah, I think that's a really good point where people are starting off normally and then just stumble into like a horrible situation. Misery, for another example, just a dude who's a writer and like off he goes and then has a terrible car accident and he's saved by the one person he shouldn't be saved by.
He was definitely pretty miserable by the end.
Yeah.
All the more horrifying because it's something that very easily could and probably has happened numerous times to someone as well. The name Misery, by the way, actually comes from a character that the writer in the book has created, who the woman who kidnaps him is a massive fan of these Misery novels. And it's the character's name, Misery Chastain.
That's right.
And so she is the number one fan of this author, Paul Sheldon's Misery novels. And she's obviously got a few screw looses. And then once she has him recuperating in her guest bedroom, she finds out that Paul Sheldon has in fact killed off the character of Misery. And that's when things start to get very, very bad.
Yeah.
So really, like in this situation, if he had either never written that she had died or she'd never found out, he would have been fine?
It's hard to say. Like, everything that's kind of happened up to that point is a bit odd, but he was caught in a huge snowstorm.
Yeah.
And the roads were completely closed and wiped out, all the phones. Because, of course, this was written in the 80s where we didn't have mobile phones. And she lives out on a remote farm. He was traveling through the Rockies, I think, in Colorado. And so for her being a retired nurse, taking him back to her home to, patch him up until she could get him to a hospital isn't that far-fetched, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that she also happens to be completely batshit insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of ruined it for him.
So he kind of had an uphill struggle from the get-go.
He did, but yes, when she found out that he had in fact killed her favorite character, that's when things went from bad to worse, because she decided to keep him hostage until he wrote a novel in which she returns to life.
Because he had the manuscript with him. Was that the reason? Like, is that what happened? Because I've not read it. And I can't
No.
remember.
The manuscript that he had with him was for his first post-misery novel, because he'd only ever written misery novels for like 10 or 15 years, and he wanted to get back to what he called real writing.
Okay, I
Is
see.
there almost like a self-insert of Stephen King, the person, into that character?
He says no.
Yeah.
But I think it is a bit of a thing on this is what a lot of famous people, like highly famous people, do fear something like this happening. And I think probably he chose writer because that's what he connects with more than, singer or movie star.
Is Jack Torrance in The Shining also a writer, or was that just in the movie?
Yeah, Jack Torrance. And here's why people really, really dislike the Kubrick film. Jack Torrance was an author in the book as well, and it's such a highly personal novel for King. There is a lot of self-insert, though at the time he didn't realize he was doing that. There's a lot of self-insert in the character of Torrance, about this man who still thinks he's a good man and he's trying to do what he can for his family to make it right after he's just fucked everything up so badly, and slowly just succumbing to his demons. And of course, the Kubrick film touches on none of that. And so that's why King fans are often very disappointed by that. And the story itself is frightening in a lot of ways. It's frightening because it's a hotel that is haunted. It's frightening because it's a hotel that wants this little boy. But it's frightening because that little boy dearly loves his father, idolizes his father. But at the same time, he knows his father may just kill him if the hotel gets the better of him.
I mean, and then I guess Stephen King would then go on to literally insert himself into his Dark Tower series.
Yes.
So I've heard. I haven't read the Dark Tower series. I read the first one, and it didn't really take my fancy. I always felt it was something you'd enjoy, though, Brayton.
I've read the first two, but it was when I was a teenager, and I got halfway through the third one, and I stopped because I kind of had a bit of, I guess, that reading fatigue when you try and read the same series back to back, you get to a point just like, I've had enough of this world for now. And I never picked it back up, but I've always been meaning to. So I think 15, 16-year-old me wasn't ready for that type of thing yet. But I think now 36-year-old me would probably appreciate it a lot more.
Yeah. And of course, he's come back more into the mainstream, I think, the last few years, because two big events have coincided with events from two of his novels in, of course, The Stand and What Happened with COVID run very similar to each other. The Stand being about a virus that wipes out, I think, it was like 99% of the population. And then, of course, Trump rising to power, who his story and his rise to power are very similar to a character called Greg Stilson from The Dead Zone, which King wrote back in the late 70s. And so that sort of brought him, I think, back into the mainstream a little bit too.
And didn't Stephen King tweet very recently that character is in fact Trump? Or was that not a real tweet?
It was a real tweet by him, and for anyone who doesn't know, he hates Trump.
Yes.
So much. And he hates Elon so very much.
It's very funny. If you ever see his tweets, they're very funny.
He can't help himself. He just digs and digs and digs at Trump all the time. Every day there's something new about Trump, to the point where Trump has blocked him on Twitter.
Yeah. Man, like That is really funny when you think about it, because Trump doesn't, he loves to just yell at people and about people. And the fact that it got to the point where he blocked someone.
But the funny thing is, I think we've mentioned it before, that Elon wants to be friends with King so badly.
He does. He so badly wants King to like him.
He let King keep his blue check mark, and King was very much, I did not pay for this. Yep. And Elon retweeted saying, "You're welcome." And then King ripped him a new one.
There was something recently that King tweeted, and Elon he shared it saying "right on" or something like that, and King basically replied going, "Fuck off."
But on the other hand, why is he still on Twitter? Like, I don't understand.
Just to say fuck off to Elon and Trump.
I think. So he can do that, yeah. He just loves... Again, he's one of those people. What's it going to do?
Yeah.
He's not going to lose his readership. He's not going to lose his money. He's got nothing... Well, he's got better things to do, but he likes it. He has fun.
Yeah, I suppose so.
And it gives us a laugh.
It does. Stay on there, Mr. King. It's hilarious.
Now, Julian... I might be wrong in this, but it seems like from our conversations we've had about Stephen King, it seems like you can almost divide his professional life into two eras. There's like the modern era of King and then his drugged up era. Do you think is that an accurate depiction?
I would actually say there's probably yes and no. I would say there's probably 3 or 4.
And I just, for anyone out there, I do not know much about, or as much about Stephen King's history as Julian would his. I'm asking as a legitimate question.
So, yes, King had a large substance abuse problem through the late 70s and most of the 80s, to which he cannot honestly remember writing some of his books, like Cujo, for example. He says he has no memory whatsoever of writing.
He does own that, doesn't he? He's very open about
very
it.
Much so. Yeah.
Admittedly, who didn't have a massive drug problem through the 70s and 80s? I don't think he was alone in that.
I don't remember anything about the 70s or 80s.
Oh.
And it was shut up. It was after writing the Tommy Knockers where his family decided he needed to get clean. And if you've ever read the book, you might understand why. And he once said that he's sure that there is a good story somewhere in that mess. He's just not sure where it is. And then he got clean after that, and he's been clean ever since. But I would say, the 90s were definitely a new era of King. But then he was involved in that horrible car accident where he was hit by the van. He very nearly died. And so after that, I think there was a new style of King writing as well that came out of that. And he's written he's very different. Like, he used to do a lot of very horrific novels. Like, obviously, The Stand has its horror. It's good and evil horror. The Shining with the ghosts. Christine, which is essentially boils down to a haunted car. Salem's Lot, which is, Dracula retold, essentially. Things like that. But after the car accident, it seems very much like he's dovetailed into... When he writes dark, he writes despairingly dark. So, for example, recently he wrote a book of short stories called Full Dark, No Stars. There's 4 tales in there, and each of them are not nice stories. So Brayton, 1922, came out of that. Okay. Stories like that. There's a story in which a woman is raped and she goes and decides, instead of reporting it, she's going to get revenge. There's a story about a man who's dying of cancer, and he meets, I guess, a jinn, essentially, and he wishes the cancer on his best friend instead. They're very disturbingly dark and very despairing kind of stories.
Do you think a lot of that comes from King kind of facing his own mortality in that moment?
Yeah, I think so, because a lot of the stories that he's done since don't deal with that horrific kind of supernatural element. It's much more about human nature. I mean, a lot of his stories beforehand were about human nature as well. But like when stories like Under the Dome, well, it's scary because are they going to run out of air or not with this dome over them? But the main villain is just a human, and he's a horrible, evil man, and that's much more terrifying than the actual dome over
That
top of the town.
that's kind of a theme, I think, from what I've seen of King. Well, one, let's put aside the fact that he completely ripped off the Simpsons movie for that book. Apparently, completely coincidental. I heard
he wrote the skeleton for Under the Dome back in the early 70s, but he said he didn't have the talent or the experience to write it, so he shelved it. And then he came up with the idea back in the mid 2000s, and someone was like, "Oh, that sounds just like the Simpsons movie," and he was like, "Oh, come on."
Quick, chuck some aliens in it.
I was going to say, from what you said of the ending, it seems like he still didn't have the talent to finish that book.
Oh, harsh words from Brayton there.
Oh, no, he's not wrong. That is the worst ending of any Stephen King story. It's just really like... I covered it in our bad endings one. I don't want to revisit that. It's PTSD, really.
All right, but my point was, you were saying there that often it's more about, like you said, in Under the Dome, that there's this huge dome that appeared out of nowhere, but the villain of the book is a human, just a person.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It seemed, at least, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the themes, a lot of them, is people put in some sort of bizarre, unworldly circumstance where the real villain is the people around them, not this kind of supernatural force imposing on them.
Yeah, probably. Like if you look at the Stand, and the core of the Stand is, yes, it's a good versus evil, and you've got Mother Abigail, who is essentially a Jesus figure, and you've got Randall Flagg, who, for all intents and purposes, is the devil of the King world, who does appear in multiple Stephen King stories.
Oh, yes. There is a Stephen King, like, multiverse.
There is, essentially. There's a multiverse. And if you read his novels, sometimes I'll mention that hotel in Colorado that burned down, which was, the Overlook Hotel from The Shining, or the car gets mentioned, which of course is a big deal in the Gunslinger stories.
Yeah, and I think King confirmed the Man in Black from the Gunslinger stories is Randall Flagg.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
Or is teasing us that he might be.
Yeah. But yeah, I was thinking of
Pennywise is supposed to be a specific entity, something. What was that one?
He's part of the Macroverse.
Right.
Yeah, and may or may not be part of the Dark Tower universe.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, Julian, when I was saying what you were saying before about The Stand, because that is like the one Stephen King book I've read recently. It's the central kind of the what you call it, the exciting, that's not the right word. The action that starts a story. What is that called? Inciting incident. Is that
it? The complication.
Complication, or the thing that sets the story in motion.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Yeah. It's the virus that kills everyone. But really, by the time you get even a quarter of way through the book, the virus is over.
Yep.
And
it's not about the virus anymore.
Another writer would have made the whole book about that first maybe quarter of the book, and it would have been a fine book. But he goes beyond that and be like, okay, what happens after?
Yeah,
and that's when the real story begins.
It's almost the scariness of the mundane. The politics of rebuilding a society is quite horrifying in a lot of ways. He talks about at the end, even in the good place, essentially, Colorado, you got the main character, Stu Redmond, becomes the town sheriff because everyone trusts him, everyone looks up to him. He was one of the first people in Colorado, that kind of thing. But when he leaves, someone actually actively campaigns to become the sheriff and starts carrying a gun, which Stu never did. And the fear that brings to Stu, thinking, well, no one, because he's carrying a gun, he's going to need it, essentially. And so that's really scary. And you'll remember, Brayton, early on in the novel where they're all traveling to Colorado and they're on the road still, that traveling circus.
Yeah.
You might remember, which is just these men who would kidnap these women and kept them in cages and were essentially raping them every day and treating them like animals in a circus. And that was far more horrifying to me than anything that Randall Flagg ever did throughout the novel. So Yeah,
Yeah, and
it tends to be the brutality of people.
yeah, and it does ask that question that when the laws kind of break down, what will people do? When there's
Yeah.
no one to hold you accountable, like how far will people go? And you have that duality of there's the people that are like, the Mother Abigail side of things where they're still maintaining their morality. Then you got the Randall Flagg side of things where they're like, screw it, I'm going to do whatever I want.
Except when they get to Colorado, obviously they're a lot more free. When they get to Las Vegas under Randall Flagg, everything's very strict. There's very strict
Yes.
anti-drugs, anti-drinking policies. No crime is permitted in any way whatsoever. They have a jail. They have police.
Yep.
There's none of that in Colorado.
Yeah, it's kind of this illusion of freedom.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah. Julian, with Stephen King, because obviously a lot of his novels do tend to step towards the fact that there's a lot of human misery going on, that given the chance, people are terrible. Has he spoken about how he really actually sees the human race? Does he have a negative thought about how at any moment we could all turn on each other and just be animals? Is that really how he sees us? Or do you think that's just the one theme that he's kind of latched onto for his stories?
I think he sees the polar opposites there. He was very heavily influenced by Lord of the Flies as well. He absolutely adores that novel. But I think he sees in people potential for great evil, but also for great goodness. Because, yeah, a lot of people do turn on each other and a lot of people become quite horrible, or they were already bad and the circumstances have allowed them to, nurture and foster that badness within them and make it more public. But then there's also people who are very good. And the circumstances that they're put in allow them to really shine. And so if you go back to The Stand, you've got character Larry Underwood, who is a man who, starting the novel, he's very lost, and he could really go one of two ways. He could really be he's on the brink of superstardom as a singer, and he could either just lose himself in that and the drugs, the alcohol, the sex, the rock and roll, and just be a horrible person, or he could be a really good guy because somewhere buried deep under all that confusion, he's one of two men. And then when the virus happens, he slowly moves into being the good person. By the end of the novel, he's one of the saviors of the world, so to speak. And so I think he sees everyone as having that potential to be one or the other. And just it's the right circumstances that will bring out which one you are. But he also sees people as very flawed and just human, like Pet Sematary. Yes, it's a haunted cemetery, so to speak. But the main character of Lewis, he's just a flawed man who makes decisions based on his humanity and his love. And everything that happens in that novel happens because of how much he loves his family. And he just wants to fix them, protect them, help them, whatever it might be. And so when his cat dies, he buries it in the pet cemetery and it comes back to life, but it doesn't come back right. And then when his son horrifically dies, he thinks, well, I'll bury my son in the pet cemetery and he'll come back. And of course, that has devastating results.
Yeah.
And so everything that he does in that novel, it's not because he's a bad guy. He's just flawed. He's making completely emotional decisions that just happen to have really horrible consequences. Another ending that he nails, by the way, Brayden.
Oh, finally.
In a way that's just horribly despairing and terrible, and you want to kill yourself afterwards, but he nails it.
Have you read The Green Mile, actually?
I've never read The Green Mile. I've only seen the film.
Yeah, I've only seen the film as
Good
well.
movie,
and obviously,
though.
you've got obviously really great characters, and the best of humanity and the worst of humanity in that particular story as well. So yeah, I see that he does his protagonists well, in that instance. But obviously, with the Green Mile, they well-meaning people who still have to make a terrible decision, in the end, to allow an innocent man and a good person to die, unfortunately.
Yeah, because it's their job, essentially. Yeah, Shawshank Redemption is another one where it humanizes people a lot. Like we often think of criminals as being these hardened, unfeeling, unemotional people, but you go into the Shawshank Redemption and you see they're really just people who have just had to adapt to their circumstances as well.
It's so funny when I'm reminded that Stephen King wrote The Shawshank Redemption, because he wrote like The Shining and It and The Stand and all this other stuff, and then here's a prison drama.
He also wrote 11/22/63, which is a love story wrapped inside a time travel novel about JFK's assassination. So he's a multi-layered author.
That one sounds great.
That novel, when you describe it like that, just feels
his best since The Stand.
But when you say it like that, it feels like he had 3 ideas for a book and couldn't flesh any of them out. So just put them all together.
I'm just going to put them all together. Was he doing drugs
possible.
At the time? Was he doing drugs at the time as that one?
This one came out in 2011.
Oh, okay. Then there you go.
One of his greatest novels and possibly the best ending, not just that he's ever written, but that has ever been written.
Oh, I'm going to have to put that on my list of things to read, I think.
I've
also heard that Joe Hill actually wrote it for him and he stuck it in.
I was thinking about Shawshank Redemption actually, because I feel like is that like either his only or one of his only novels that has no supernatural elements to it whatsoever? Because I cannot think of another one that has like nothing to do with something mysterious.
Oh, there's a few. The Shawshank Redemption takes place in a collection of short stories, different seasons, and 3 of those novellas have no supernatural elements whatsoever.
Okay.
So The Body is one of them, which was made into Stand By Me.
I
forgot he did that one too.
Jesus, one of his
Apt Pupil as well.
Great
work.
Apt
Pupil. I forgot Apt Pupil is one of his as well. Oh my gosh.
I've not heard
the
of that one.
ending of that story is so very different to the ending in the film, and has one of the most haunting last sentences that you'll ever read, I think. Because the story, if you don't know, the story is about this boy who finds out that this old man is actually a retired SS. What do you call him? And so instead of dobbing him in, officer or whatever.
Nazi,
so instead of dobbing him in, he blackmails him and basically says, "You're going to tell me everything about what you did in this time."
Did Family Guy make a joke about that? I feel like Family Guy's done that.
Yeah, I'm sure they have.
I don't know. But he gets more and more corrupted by the stories that he's hearing, and the old man becomes more and more like his former self the more he talks about it. And in the end, it kind of culminates where the old man kills a homeless man because he misses killing people. The boy gets a visit from his guidance counselor, who he then murders with a gun, a rifle. And the last sentence, basically, he took his rifle up onto the overpass, and it was 5 hours later and like 13 cops or whatever to take him down.
Oh, God.
And that's the last sentence of the book. You're like, oh.
And I think what's so haunting about that is because America has seen that exact thing happen time and time again. And that's what probably is the most scary thing about that book, is because that's fucking real and it happens, and it happens constantly. So, yeah.
And then you get Pennywise, who is one of the scariest characters he's ever written.
Yeah.
I want to ask a question about King's writing itself. Because the one thing I've heard him being accused of is that he tends to write in a very meandering style.
Yes.
Where he could have said something in one sentence, but he says it in 5 paragraphs.
He likes to fill
almost
you in
Tolkien-esque
on everything.
I was about to say, and you make fun of Tolkien.
He's not quite Tolkien in that he doesn't spend forever describing one thing. But he does, however, in what might be a paragraph of, out of the corner of his eye, he saw someone doing something down the street. He'll meander down to see what that person's actually doing and tell us about it. And so they become like little side stories along the way. often going nowhere. But just little, I guess, happenstances of life that happen along the main characters' journeys, which he did it in The Stand a lot. You might remember, Brayton.
I listened to the audiobook, and it was the unabridged version. And it's the one that included all the stuff he had to cut out from the original publication. And I think his editor told him, or his publisher told him, to cut it out because literally the printers back in the 70s couldn't handle that many pages.
Yeah.
It's a big book.
It's a huge book. So
yeah, he can meander, and there are times where you're like, oh, dude, come on, just like get back to the point. So yeah, it's not his greatest quality.
And I think that is sometimes the intimidating thing about King's work, because like I'd say like his two, when you think of Stephen King, like the first two that always pop to mind are like The Stand and It. So you're like, great, I'm going to go read them, and you look from the bookstore and they're like over 1,000 pages each. Like, that's intimidating.
It is, especially if you're not much of a reader.
Yeah.
That long. Well, some of The Stand did, which is why he wound up killing some of his main characters about 3/4 of the way through, because it was going nowhere. But it never feels that long when you're reading it. It's always moving forward, I think.
And I guess that's a sign of a good author if he can write a book that long and still keep the pace going.
Yeah. The ending is once again a little bit like, oh, okay. But right up until that point, it moves along quite a lot.
Well, that's good.
And of course, I should clarify, people keep talking about Pennywise the Clown, and the portrayals of Pennywise the Clown, but people have to also understand that Pennywise was not a real clown. It was a macroverse entity that happened to occasionally take the form of a clown.
Well, he takes, I think, in the movies, at least the most recent movie, he takes on several forms.
He does. In the book, he's the clown because kids love clowns, but also when the kids get close to this clown, they know that something's very, very wrong with this clown.
Yeah.
But he's also a mummy at one point, werewolf, Jaws. He becomes Jaws at one point. Yeah.
Giant spider.
Various. Well, now the spider, which was horribly done in the Tim Curry adaptation in the 90s.
Yes.
The spider is because when they see it in its true form, their minds actually can't comprehend what the creature is. And the closest one of the characters can come to is thinking of it as a giant spider. And so that's then how everyone sees it, because it essentially becomes what they think it is in a lot of ways. And so that's how they actually managed to kill it, by making it obey the form that they see it taking, essentially. Because once Penny inhabits certain form, it must take on the strengths and the weaknesses of that form.
Very Lovecraftian there, of not being able to comprehend what
his macroverse is. His macroverse is very much inspired by Lovecraft.
So, where does the macroverse actually show up in other novels?
Well, obviously, it's a big part of it. The macroverse is part of The Stand. It's part of the Dark Tower series. A book called Insomnia, which is a kind of a companion story to one of the Dark Tower, or maybe all the Dark Tower ones. So it shows up in a number of his, and it's always kind of there in the background. The macroverse kind of is, I guess, like the MCU is to us, all the different dimensions and what have you.
There is a really good YouTube video, I think I've shared with you, Julian, before, where someone breaks down exactly how every story is connected and which characters kind of cross over between different stories.
Yeah. It is all connected. And Shawshank, of course, is often mentioned prison in a lot of his books set in Maine.
Yeah, and sometimes it's no more than just an offhanded mention of something somewhere that if you
you get sent to Shawshank or something like that.
I find that really funny considering that's like, one of the only magical, mystical, supernatural stories, but that prison keeps turning up in other stories.
Apparently, he said once that this old woman met him, and she said, "You're that Stephen King fella, aren't you?" And he said, "I don't like your books." And he was like, "Oh, okay." And she said, "Why can't you write a nice story like that Shawshank book?"
All right then.
Now, Julian, do you know about the one book that King chose to take out of print?
I do. Yes.
Lovely. Eloise, do you?
I do not know.
It's called, I think it's called Rage.
It is.
And it's
Rage.
about
That's Richard Bachman.
Yeah, and it's about a school shooting.
Oh, okay. I can
And
understand why he took it out of print.
Yeah, he chose to take it out of print. I think correct me if I'm wrong, but it's very hard to come across nowadays.
If you can find an original copy of the Bachman books, it's still in that. I believe he clarified by saying he didn't specifically go, okay, pull it off the shelves. Instead, he let the, whatever you call it, run. He didn't renew any kind of publishing to it. And it's not about a school shooting, but the start of the novel is an ex-student does come onto campus, does kill a couple of people, including a teacher, and then holds the class hostage while they talk through, I guess, the pressures of adolescence and the modern day and things like that. But yeah, because one of the school shooters, I can't remember which one it was. There's so many; they all blend into one another now. Had a copy of Rage in his locker, and so Stephen King went, "Well, that's about enough of that."
Right.
Yep.
He is actually a massive proponent for gun control. He would very much love to see guns controlled in the US, and can't understand why that hasn't happened.
When did he write the novel, and when did he pull it?
Rage was written, would have been in the early 80s, I think. He wrote it.
Okay.
When he was still writing under the title of Richard Bachman for some of his books. I think he let the option lapse. I guess it would have been in the late 90s or early 2000s when it basically became trendy to take a gun to school and kill people.
So it might have been Columbine, perhaps.
It wasn't Columbine. It was a 14-year-old kid, so it may have been the mid-90s.
So just on Wikipedia, it was first published in 1977, and then it was collected in an omnibus in 1985. But it just says the novel describes a school shooting and has been associated with actual high school incidents in the 80s and 90s. In response, King allowed the novel to fall out of print.
Yeah.
Then it goes on to say, in 2013, King published the anti-firearms violence essay Guns.
It's an interesting read if you ever get a chance to read it. And he talks about why does America have such a fascination, not just with guns, but with these assault weapons that they just don't need.
Yeah.
Like, if you want a gun, fine. That's fine. I don't care if you want a gun, but why do you need an assault weapon?
And bump stocks. What's the point of a bump stock? Making an assault weapon have even more ability. I just don't understand. I don't understand their reasoning. It's quite weird.
All right.
Yeah, it's interesting that he allowed that to lapse, though. Like, I think that's a really noble thing.
It is, because he's very much anti-censorship. He doesn't feel like authors should censor themselves.
And like, do you think there was anything in the novel that was possibly preaching to those types of people to think this is something to idolize and emulate? Or what was the point of the novel? Like, was the person condemned, or was it like, let's look into their mind and see why it was, an excuse? Or
I can't really recall. I believe the teacher he shot, he just didn't like. She wasn't a nice person. I can't recall exactly what happened, but I think what it does is that it humanizes the character. Yes, what he did was wrong, but that's the thing with Stephen King, is that he humanizes people so well that you can feel empathy for someone like that in a lot of ways. Some of his characters you don't feel any empathy for; they're just flat out horrible. Like Big Jim from Under the Dome is you really want to get his comeuppance. But some of the bad guys, like Harold Lauder in The Stand, you really do feel empathy for. Especially at the end where you realize he was just a poor kid who, he was misled. And so you really feel, but even though he committed an atrocity and 12 people, I think, died because of his
something
actions,
like that.
You still feel sorry for him at the end when you're like, he was just a kid who didn't know any better. And I think that was part of the problem with the novel Rage, is that this boy, I think he was like 18 or 19, the character, you do feel empathy towards him. You don't condone what he does, but you understand that he's a flawed human who maybe just needed help at a critical time and didn't get it.
Well, I think you could argue that that's the same for any of the people who commit mass shootings, especially school shootings, because the majority of school shootings do tend to be a student or a former student who has gone through something. And it's certainly not to condone what they did at all. Like, that's heinous. But at the same time, it's like, what drove this person to do that? And were there opportunities that we missed to stop them turning into that person? Like, where do you draw the line of feeling sorry for the child but then hating the adult or the young adult that they've become because of the action that they committed? So I think it's probably an important light to shine on the fact that maybe we need to be being better at being better with people so that they don't turn into monsters the way that they do in both real life and in Stephen King's novels.
But he's also very clear to let us know that some people are just born monsters and they're just waiting for the right opportunity to.
Oh, there are certain people out
and
there.
I think with all of our kind of fascination with true crime nowadays has shown that some people that commit these crimes were just born at the wrong time. In the wrong place with the wrong parents, and other people had the best upbringing you could ask for and still did horrific things.
Yep.
Or if you look at
no rhyme or reason to why certain people do certain things at all.
Yeah.
If you look at Jeffrey Dahmer versus Ted Bundy, I think Dahmer in the modern age, there's an argument to be made that maybe he'd have been found out for what he was and who he was sooner, and may have received some of the help that he so desperately needed before he went on to commit his atrocities. Ted Bundy, I think, was born to kill people, and I don't think any amount of intervention at any point would have stopped him from achieving his goals.
All right. Well, to maybe end the show on a bit of a lighter note. It's been a very good. I think we could talk for hours.
I could.
I definitely
you
could.
Julian
could. Julian, I want to ask you a few questions.
Sure.
Rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Let's go.
Best and worst Stephen King film adaptations, in your opinion?
Ooh, okay.
That you've seen. You don't have to count the ones you haven't seen.
Best that I've seen. Are we talking good movies or are we talking good adaptations?
Either way, in your opinion, if you said this is the best Stephen King film based on his book, whatever that means to you.
Okay. There's quite a few, actually, like Shawshank Redemption, Stand By Me, Doctor Sleep is a very good one. Gerald's Game also is a really good adaptation.
I love
Pretty
Gerald's
much any
Game.
of his dramas or Misery are great adaptations of King novels. Kubrick's The Shining is a horrible adaptation while also having the polar opposite of being a brilliantly made film.
Yeah.
Such a strange, it's so strange that, because it's such a bad adaptation, but such a great film.
But as we've talked about, and how Doctor Sleep kind of is really good and kind of straddled that line between being faithful to both book and Kubrick's film.
Yeah. And that's just a testament to Mike Flanagan, really.
Who also...
And Ewan McGregor.
Yeah, and Mike Flanagan, who also did Gerald's Game.
And Carla, I think it's good. I don't know
Carla Gugino, I think it is.
I'm not sure how you pronounce it.
Anyway,
we all know who I'm talking
email
about.
in, Carla, and let us know.
Who played a part that should never have been on screen. Like, there's no way you could have filmed that book successfully, and yet the two of them working together did it.
Gerald.
And so that's amazing.
Gerald's Game, for anyone that doesn't know, it's essentially husband and wife have this romantic weekend in this secluded cabin to kind of rekindle their relationship. And things get a little kinky, I guess you could say, and she's handcuffed to the bed, and the husband has a heart attack and dies.
So horrifying.
Left. Have you seen it, Eloise?
I've not seen it, but I know the story.
I wouldn't recommend it for you at all.
I know what she does to get out of the handcuffs.
It's not just that. It's you start to find out parts of her life and why she chose to wind up with a man like him, and it's not. I don't think it's a story you would enjoy.
And Bruce Greenwood is so good.
He's very good in it, but he's got quite the resurgence thanks to Mike Flanagan.
Yeah,
his lemon speech in House of Usher. It was amazing.
Watched the whole series just for that speech.
Oh, brilliant. Just for that speech.
All right.
Worst adaptations.
Worst one.
Ooh.
And we're not counting Maximum Overdrive.
That is just the best. Watch that if you want 2 hours of Emilio Estevez and animated trucks. Loloma Man springs to mind, in which there's literally nothing to do with the short story whatsoever.
Okay.
There are a few Stephen King adaptations that you look at and just go, what the fuck was that?
I always think of, did Under the Dome really need a 5-season TV adaptation?
I gave up after 2 episodes.
Long?
I swear it was something like
three seasons, I think.
Oh, gosh.
The recent Pet Sematary remake wasn't great because they switched the kids who died, and that just completely changed the very fundamental element of the novel itself. And their reason was, because they wouldn't understand the death of a kid anyway. Like the girl wouldn't have understood that, and that was kind of King's point, and you ruin the whole thing. And because he'll crucify me if I don't mention it, the Boogeyman, Richie asked me to mention the Boogeyman, which is a short story in Night Shift, which is it's a powerful little 8-page story that just, when it ends, you're just like, what the fuck did I just read? It's crazy. Like, read it, and nothing scary really kind of happens until the last 2 lines of that short story. It's all about this guy telling about a scary thing that happened to him, and then all of a sudden that catches up with him in the present. But they made a film of it recently on Disney Plus, which I understand is not a good adaptation. So that possibly could be up there too.
All right. Okay. Next question. Same thing. Your favorite Stephen King book?
It's toss-up.
Yep.
Definitely a toss-up between The Shining and 11/22/63. Although Christine is my comfort Stephen King novel.
I'm sorry. How are Stephen King novels comfort novels? That doesn't.
Well, Brayton Saw is Brayton's comfort film.
Oh, yeah.
It's a known entity that we, for some reason, connect with. I connect with. I read Christine first when I was about 16 or 17, and the main characters are 16 or 17, and I really connected with one of the main characters in that novel. So I revisit it every now and then as a comfort novel.
Nothing wrong with that.
But The Shining or 11/22/63, I would say, are my 2 favorites.
And last question, I guess. If anyone out there is thinking of delving into the world of King, what would be a good starting point? Because we said some of them can be quite intimidating. Where do you think someone just looking to dip their toes in could start?
I started with Misery when I was about 12 or 13. I think that's a good starting point. It's short. It's not one of his more fantastical stories either. It's quite brutal and quite realistic. So that's probably a good place to start, or potentially something like, Carrie, which was, of course, his first published novel.
Mm.
Also quite short, quite easy to get through, and really interesting story as well. So I think either Carrie or Misery would probably be one of the two places I'd start.
I
Okay,
just
awesome.
realized Misery is another one of the books that has no supernatural
Of
elements.
course.
None, no. It's a really good novel though. Like, and Kathy Bates in the film, and
Yeah,
James Caan.
Is that the one she
they're
won?
both
Just
amazing.
She won the Oscar for that, didn't she?
yeah, she did,
Which is
and she's brilliant.
so rare for, I guess I could call it a horror movie.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess so.
So rare for a
Julian,
horror movie to get accolades.
did
Hmm.
you I mean, admittedly, they're getting more accolades now because people are suddenly coming around to the fact that they can actually be decent filmmaking. Julian, did you watch that television series from a couple of years ago that was like a prequel to Misery, which was all about that character and who she was
Oh,
before the
that was the
movie?
show
There was a
Castle
prequel to
Rock.
Misery?
There was, yeah. It
Not
was a two
exactly.
season it was a two season show. I've completely forgotten the name of it, but the
It's
first
called Castle
season,
Rock.
that's it, Castle
Yes,
Rock. That's
yeah,
right. The
Castle
first
Rock.
season was a completely different story, and it was about Shawshank actually, and a particular entity that
The character in that, the main character in that, is not a King original. He's
not
a,
yeah.
but the characters around him were from
Yes.
Stephen King novels.
But
Yeah.
there was a lot of like tie-ins to different things, and then there was
Hmm.
like it was a great show. Like I don't
Yeah,
know if you've
I'm just on the
Bill
Wikipedia
Skarsgård.
page.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm on the Wikipedia page and I can only see like 5 references to Shawshank.
Yes,
Mm.
yeah. And
So
then
that was, yeah.
the second season is set in the same universe, and there's actually some very brief references to the first season, but they're sort of blink and you miss them references. And it's all about what is the name of the lady again, Kathy Bates's character, in Misery.
Annie Wilkes.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Annie
So it's all
Wilkes.
about Annie
Annie
Wilkes
Wilkes.
and her as a younger
Yeah.
woman.
Mm.
Like, and apparently she's a mother, but I won't spoil exactly what that's all about because the part of the ending. But it was, I thought it was actually really quite interesting because it sort of gives an original insight into the type of person she was and why she turned into the person that she became in Misery. And I'm not sure what you thought of it if you saw it.
I didn't see that, but if you read the novel, there's a lot of insight into her. She starts as a young person. She kills her father. She kills a college roommate because they got in her way, essentially.
Oh,
She
okay.
becomes a midwife, and babies in her ward start dying as well. It was covered up as SIDS and stuff like that.
Okay.
But then it got to a point where they're like, no, we actually need to start looking into this. And yeah, so you find out a lot about that. So maybe it runs kind of along those lines. I don't know, but I didn't see the second season.
Yeah, it kind of does. It's actually been a while since I last watched it, and now I can't really recall if that's like what it was. But yeah, like I think what they were trying to represent in that particular season is that she became very much a product of her upbringing kind of thing, I suppose. I could be completely wrong
Her
with that.
father
I'm
wasn't a
remembering it.
nice man. Her father
He
wasn't
was
nice.
in
And
it. Yeah.
that becomes a recurring theme through a lot of King's novels. Dads aren't particularly nice people.
Yeah, he was in it, and from what I recall, he was a nice man, and I think that might be trying to put onto her the reason why she became what she was all her own doing, I guess. I'm gonna have to look it up again. But yeah.
He wasn't a good person in the book, I'll tell you that.
Okay.
But his own father did the whole go down the street corner for a bottle of milk and never return.
Ah, I see.
So that, I think, had a lot of impact on his family, the way he writes family situations.
Mm. All right.
Okay, yep.
Yeah.
Was that the last question, Brayton?
That's all I had. Yep, unless anyone else has anything to add.
No. Unless Julian, any final thoughts?
Final thoughts is that give him a try. A lot of people shy away from him because they don't like horror or because he's not considered great literature, which I would disagree with. I think he's a brilliant writer. And yeah, he can write some really bad endings, which he himself has confessed to. But there's very few authors out there who I think manage to capture the human condition and make characters so real than Stephen King. He just has this knack to make you want to go on that journey with these characters. And that's why his endings are so bad, because he doesn't write the endings. He writes the journey, and that journey's over, and because characters are either still alive or they're not. Give him a try, because if you enjoy characters who are fleshed out, who are real, who you want to go on a journey with, then yeah, there's not a lot of authors out there who are better at it than him.
Like, I know I've mentioned it before that I've not read a lot of his novels. I have read The Dead Zone, and I thoroughly recommend that one. It's actually a very good book.
Don't start with Pet Sematary, especially if you're a parent.
I have no desire to read Pet Sematary or watch the film. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you once again, guys, for a brilliant episode. Thank you, Julian, for bringing Stephen King to the table this week. Hopefully you're all out there enjoying the spooky season.
Yep. Next episode, we begin our 2 months of Christmas.
And Julian's quit the podcast again.
Go out and get Tubi and a VPN, because Tubi has some brilliant horror movies on it at the moment.
Okay.
And it's free.
And if you're in the mood for a good Christmas movie, apparently Terrifier 3 is set at Christmas.
And yet they're releasing it at Halloween.
I know, what the heck? Perfect movie to take the family to.
But like, it feels like it should be a Christmas movie.
It's like The Nightmare Before Christmas. It's both a Halloween and a Christmas movie. You can legitimately watch it between now and Christmas.
Yeah.
All right.
And go watch interviews with Damien Thornton Smith. Is it Smith?
I think so. The
actor
who
Art the Clown. He is not what you would expect when you see Art the Clown.
I think you said too, and I was surprised to say very soft spoken.
Very soft spoken, slight southern twang. The interview I watched, he was building Batman Lego, and having a chat about his days as a mime and a physical comedian. So
wow,
go and watch some interviews with him. It's really interesting.
Yeah, Art the Clown from the Terrifier series. It is not everyone's cup of tea, those movies.
I normally hate extreme gore, but for some reason,
something does it for you.
All right, trigger warning for extreme gore.
Extreme gore.
Yeah,
but it's gore in such a way that at some point you just sit back and you just go, I just want to enjoy the effects, because there's no way this is trying to be realistic. I'm just enjoying the effects.
Yeah, okay. And if anyone's seen the first two, all I need to say is the bedroom scene, and you know what I'm talking about.
Or the hacksaw scene. The first one.
Oh, the bedroom scene got me way more than that. Than the hacksaw
I don't know
scene.
what you're talking about, and I already feel uncomfortable. All right,
we'll tell you.
There was an interview with the actress who did the hacksaw scene.
Yeah,
and she just talked about how they filmed it. And for her, the hardest part of it was being strapped up by her ankles all night naked.
Yeah,
because they filmed in the dead of winter.
Oh no,
that's not a good working environment.
She had a lot of fun. Like, they all had a lot of fun, but because she had to be naked for it, and it was winter, it was not comfortable.
Oh no,
I would say not. All right, if you would like to get in contact with us, please do so by writing into us to our Gmail account, nothelpfulpod@gmail.com. You can like and subscribe to us on our Facebook and Instagram page, which is We're Not Helpful Podcast on Facebook and Not Helpful Pod on Instagram.
Yep. I also say we are also now on Blue Sky.
Ah, okay, excellent.
We've joined the Blue Sky. I won't say Exodus because we were never on Twitter, but Blue Sky is taking off, so I'm jumping on the bandwagon. We're on there too. So look us up.
And of course, I have tried to set up a Tumblr profile. I haven't gotten very far on that. I'll try and fix that. So if you're on Tumblr,
and as always, if you if you want us to sell your products and are willing to pay us to advertise your products, I will take your money and I will advertise whatever you want.
Whatever you want.
If you pay me, I will advertise it.
Somebody get this episode to Stephen King so he can come on. Dropout TV, yes. I will happily take your money. I will pay to interview someone from Dropout. That would be amazing.
Yes.
I would just take an acknowledgement from Stephen King.
But I would pay.
Even if Stephen King said, I heard there's this podcast in Australia that mentioned me, fucking losers, I would take that.
If he listened and said this guy Julian just missed the point of every single one of my books.
Worst podcast
I would still take that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like he mentioned me.
Okay. We need to get on Twitter apparently and tag him.
I tried. Right. He didn't answer back.
Of course he wouldn't.
Don't forget to also follow us on all of the podcast apps. Please leave us a little review and 5-star reviews if you think we're 5 stars or 1 star. I don't know. No, don't leave us 1 star. Make it 3. 3's nice. That's average.
I'm a person too, Mr. King. I demand to be acknowledged.
All right. We will join you again in the next 2 weeks. Thanks once again for listening. I'm Eloise. Joining me as always is Brayton and Julian, and we will see you later. Bye-bye.